Mike, can you give us just a little bit of background on the tremendous achievement of the club making the playoffs 3 years in a row?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. We talk a lot internally as a group about our goal being really trying to sustain success. And you guys have all grown up around the NCAA basketball tournament and grew up playing in playoff type, one-off cup games. And, you don't have to be a statistician or an analyst to know, when you make the playoffs, you go from a 1 in 14 chance to get into the cup to a 1 in 7 chance. So, for us, we always kind of feel like if we can get ourselves above the line each year, we put ourselves in position for that, flip a coin type Russian roulette version of playoffs. And, the reality is, in most countries in the world, you don't have playoffs. You honor and award the teams for playing for the full regular season. For that reason, again, I want to congratulate LAFC, doing a tremendous job all year winning a supporter shield. The reality is that, no matter what happens, during the course of your full season, the reality is you're probably measured more over a 2 or 3 week period. And I mentioned a flip of the coin. I mean, the reality is that, whether it's one call, look, we had an errant handball not called in the Philadelphia game, last year in the playoffs that potentially could have been a penalty kick for us in the first half. We had an injury time extend, 3 minutes, a minute longer when they Philly scored their goal to tie it. Those are things, you can't control. After Philly beats us in playoffs, the next game they have 11 players get COVID, and they essentially play with a second team in the Eastern Conference Finals. You can't control stuff like that. So, knowing how improbable and the uniqueness of playoffs in any sport is, for us, I always look at it like you get in the playoffs, you take your best shot, and if the weather is good that day and the ball bounces right that day and players are healthy, etc., you see what happens. But we obviously have expectations of pursuing a cup every year. I don't say using the playoffs as a barometer as trying to lower expectations. As I said to our team the other day, the reality is it's like a road race, and you have different mile markers along the way. You can't just start the race and complete a marathon. You have to go through certain mile markers, and before you talk about MLS Cups, you have to get into the playoffs and then worry about what happens there. So for us to be one of 5 teams in MLS history to go to the playoffs in each of our first 3 seasons, for us to be one of 6 teams currently in MLS who have been in the playoffs in 2020, 21, and 22, you got to understand, that's less than 25% of the teams in our league who've done that. So for us to be able to have that kind of sustained success, if we continue each year to kind of battle above the playoff line, every once in a while we're going to make it in MLS Cup. So I think for us, we've got a great opportunity. We're playing with house money, going to play against a very strong team in Los Angeles, and excited about taking our best chance out there.
Thank you, Mike. We'll start with Stephen Borio here on the floor, and then we'll go to the Zoom with Tim Sullivan. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hey, Mike. I just want to talk about the process this season. The team had some hiccups in the middle of the year, but then you picked up Shaq Moore in the huge signing, then you picked up Jacob Schaffelberg, who's been a fantastic addition to the team. Can you talk about those decisions to, in the middle of the season to bring in those guys to boost the team up and to the performance of the second half of the season, getting to that 3rd straight playoff?
Sure, thanks. It's interesting sometimes. I think the fantasy football or FIFA nature of the transfer windows. It's always like, who are you going to sign? I just want to yell at me a game once, like, do something. It's not it's not like a basketball game with a clock that ticks down. For us, I really appreciate the fact that we didn't compromise our own plans. We had players identified that we were going to get, and it was pretty well documented that we pursued Shaq for a loan in January, and when it didn't work in the winter window, we were pretty dogged with the idea that, where we continued to look at other candidates in that role, for us, Shaq was always the guy, and, the fact that he was a really unique player, not only for me the best right back in MLS in our U.S. national team pool, but I just think he offers some different dimensions than other players. And when you see his ability to go forward, get engaged in the attack, I think for us he's just a little different right back than most really any team in the league has. And for us, we just always kind of felt that he fit the game model and the system that Gary wanted to play. Likewise with that, with Jacob Schaffelberg, we joked about the fact that it was like, 10 months, 11 months after we started talking about him that we finally got him. He was somebody that we always kind of had our eyes on from the standpoint of, what he looked like. And I think if you asked Gary, he would tell you maybe that it wasn't as urgent to add a winger straight away, knowing we were going to play maybe our first 8 games in a row to maybe a different shape, maybe a different system. I think, knowing that we were always kind of, plugged into what Jake was doing, and, it was something we were always fond of. And, the idea for us to acquire him on loan with an option to purchase, for any club, ideally, it's like being able to test drive somebody rather than just take them initially. And even if you feel strongly about a player like Jake that you want, the idea of getting him on a loan initially is, it's just like a no-brainer for us, and was the ideal deal for us to do. For us, I mentioned about not compromising our plans. I think regardless to how badly people might want changes in a team or additions, we're always committed to trying to improve the group we have, but also appreciate the fact that, we're not going to be distracted by outside noise and stay focused on who the right players are. And, I think both those guys, as you mentioned, clearly have changed the outlook not only of our group, but of our season as well.
Thank you, Mike. Next we'll go to Tim Sullivan, then Claudio Villalobos. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, Mike, you always mention that making it into the postseason is certainly the bar, but you also talk about having kind of milestones that you want to hit along the way of the season. How would you evaluate this regular season in terms of what your preseason expectations were? And obviously, I think every general manager in the league is going to say they feel like they can win it all, but how do you feel about your team's chances in the postseason?
No, Tim, it's a good question too, because we talk about this sometimes about you have recency bias. That you could have a great game and say this guy's good, lose that game and you think you're terrible. I feel like I try to go into each week kind of stressing a mantra like never as good as it seems, never as bad as it seems. I think when people think we're the best team in the league, we probably aren't. People think we're really struggling, we probably aren't either. So it's been some marathon. It's funny when you throw it, looking at the whole season. It's amazing to think that we're here in a postseason already. The first 8 seasons first 8 games was an absolute bear. And I was talking to the staff at LAFC last weekend. When they were just saying they just can't get over how we did that. And not having to play on the road. Look, other teams. Tim, I always feel like a drinking game. Whenever I mention Sporting Kansas City and New York Knicks, you're going to take a drink, But Sporting Kansas City played their first 10 games on the road when they opened their new stadium. When they did that, and Teal was a part of that group. There are other teams that have had to open a season on the road like that, but never cross country like that. I just think. I think unless you're in it sometimes, you don't appreciate it. And I think the idea of having to travel, look at our trip to Vancouver, a 4-hour plus flight plus a 2-hour time change. I get it that people probably think, well, they're flying a charter plane or they're just playing soccer, it is super demanding on your body. And when you look at the fact, I think the league didn't do as much favors with having twice to have cross-country travel on and then 72 hours later play another game at home. That's really hard, And I just think, even with us expecting to be competitive, we knew the Western Conference was going to be hard. I think even though we knew it was hard, we had no idea how tough that travel was going to be. Truly, no one else has done it before, so it's not like we have a reference to draw from. I spent a lot of time looking at best practices, what have other people done in our sport, other sports. It's hard, So to think about what that was like, what it did for us. Open that new building, look, it's a palace, and I think it's amazing. And I know everyone's all happy about, the opportunity for us to have this amazing facility to play in. And what I think is interesting, we have different chapters, Tim, how we look at the season, but so I'm kind of interesting, kind of reflecting back on those different chapters. To get through those first 8 games as well as we had was, really couldn't have expected that. So, I'd be lying if I told you, we knew we'd do that. We definitely did not know that. I think there's a greater chance of us losing every game than doing what we did. Truly, so I think it was exceptional to start the season. The challenges at home, when I look back on it, I think start to other guys around the league, and as you probably can imagine, we have to all talk to each other, the other general managers or chief soccer officers. Unless we're playing each other, we're all working together on deals or other things together. And I think the biggest difference this year at home to the 2 seasons prior, I think the lack of respect we got from opposing teams the first 2 years, teams just came out and said they could do whatever they wanted against us, and I think we're really surprised when we would, hit them on the break or things we did. This year, every team we played against at home for the most part, except for a couple teams, maybe LAFC, LA Galaxy, Seattle, they all set in against us. They all kind of said, look, we're not going to let these guys catch us on a break. I had at least one coach for another team after they had beaten us said to me, look, we went into this game saying that we were not going to let Mukhtar Sapong beat us. We were going to let you guys in the back have the ball. We didn't care for the 0-0 draw. We're going to let you guys beat us. So I just think, teams gave us more respect this year, which was very different in years past. And the other thing, too, I think, in all due respect to Nissan Stadium, you look at MLS 1.0 and everyone played in NFL venues. It just wasn't special. You know, and now when teams come in, they're out in the field. You see the visiting teams when they walk the field, they're taking photos of their phones and they're posing for pictures. And you know, played Colorado earlier this year, and Diego Rubio, I'd worked with him in Kansas City, and he came over to me and just couldn't get over like how nice our stadium was. So we went from like people like not being impressed or underwhelmed at Nissan to now getting everyone's best shot because they wanted a chance to play in front of a big crowd in this new venue. And I think it made it hard at home, you know. And I do think as the season went on, and for sure the additions of guys like Shaq and Jacob have helped us. But I think we were able to kind of grab the grips a little bit more at home. And as I say that, obviously we had a major hurdle against Houston. We played against them, and we'd love to finish the season better than we had, you know, at least from that standpoint. But you know, for us to finish regular season with for a career high in wins for a season, for us to kind of return to who we were as maybe the league's best defense on the road, you know, I'm really proud of that. I'm kind of proud of how he finished. When you see how long the year was, not just like literally, but like, you know, even figuratively, all those road games to start the season. Really proud of how our group did, and you know, to finish joint fourth, you know, in a conference as tough as the Western Conference. You know, I really feel like it was an excellent season for us.
Thank you, Mike. We'll wrap up today's session with Claudio Villalobos. Go ahead, Claudio.
Mike, sort of a follow-up on both questions. When you look at the type of work that you guys have done, you and your office, in terms of bringing players to the team, I might say, I wouldn't say that it's very, very successful from my point of view. But when you look at a guy like Hani Maktar, I mean, perhaps you might have seen at the time players with a higher name around the league, around anywhere that you might have thought about it and bring it in, and then you decided to go to Hani. What does it feel inside for you, the fact that you made that decision to bring a guy like Hani after all he's accomplished, especially with the Golden Boot already, you know, on the verge to become the most valuable player in the league? And also a second thought on perhaps on Tim's question, the fact that Nashville has never lost yet a game, a playoff in 3 years in the regular time. What does it tell you about the opportunity the team has in LA this coming Saturday?
Well, Claudio, thanks. And you know, I'd say maybe kind of similar to the question Tim posed. I mean, I think it'd be easy to just say you expected all those things, you know, but I'd be lying if I told you like that we thought Hani was going to be a Golden Boot winner and MVP like in season 3. You know, I think most of you in a call probably at the end of season 1 were thinking, you know, that Hani was a bust. You know, so I think to think of where he is, I think you know, we're all really proud of what he's accomplished. For me, I think it's very affirming. You know, when you look at not only that we made him our first DP, but what we paid for him in relation to what DPs go for around the league. I mean, it's an accomplishment for our entire club, and a lot of people go into making a decision like that. I can tell you that I'm only one person involved in a larger group being involved in something like that. So I think if we had to praise everyone involved, we'd be here a long time. But you know, for us, you mentioned about around the league. I think MLS 1.0, and you see it, some clubs still do that, the idea of trying to sign these players who made their names somewhere else and they're in their twilight of their career and coming to MLS, it's just not part of like who we are as an organization. And that's not just me or Gary, but it's Ian. That's our ownership group with John Ingram. We just don't believe in doing that. You know, I think for us, we've had a great success with finding players who kind of carry the ethos of, I think, our city in some ways also, trying to prove ourselves. And I think Hani's a great example of somebody who maybe now is a star in our league and, you know, is obviously doing really well financially for himself also. But he came to our league with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove. And, you know, I think about the group of guys we have, and I think, you know, our rosters are littered with guys like that, you know, who came here trying to prove themselves. And I think take pride in knocking the likes of some of these other groups of teams with star-studded players who are 30-somethings off their perch. And for me, I think, you know, we've taken great pride in doing that. We've made in a very short time, in our first 3 years, we've made a history of doing that. And we're looking forward to the opportunity to another shot doing it against a very strong LA Galaxy team over the weekend. And, Cody, you had 2 questions. The second part was?
The fact that Nashville has not lost yet on a playoff game after 90 minutes, even if those games have been away.
Yeah, look, we're really proud of the fact that, as mentioned before, like since 2020, no team in our league has a better goals against average in the road. No team in the league has more shutouts in the road. I would think when you look at the core we have in our team, you know, we've had 9 players who've been a part of our key core, each of 20, 21, and 22. My guess is that most teams would not want to face that group coached by Gary on the road. You know, and I don't really care who you are. You know, the fact that we lost the eventual MLS Cup champions in overtime in 2020, the fact that, to me, I think we lost to the best team in the East last year in penalties, albeit in a strange set of circumstances. I think this group's shown and demonstrated that they can take anybody on. And to me, the bigger the stage, when the lights shine the brightest, the better this team plays. I love the fact that against a star-studded team in 20, we knocked Toronto off. That last year, a team that, known in the league has spent more in MLS history than Atlanta. We had beaten them away. The fact that we're coming off a victory against the league's best team, LAFC. And the fact that each of those games were on the road. I just think we're probably a team that, you mentioned about 4-9 playing with house money, we're probably a team on paper that most teams do not want to play against in playoffs. And that's why I like it.
Taking the podium with Nashville SC goalkeeper Joe Willis. Joe, coming off a fantastic career-high match. Just tell us how you're feeling heading into this week where you've been a part of a club that's been to the playoffs 3 years in a row.
Yeah, it's a big game for us against LA, obviously. They're a good team, and it's a difficult environment, but I think we have a lot of confidence going into this game after the way we played, or after getting a result against LAFC. Like you said, 3 years in the league, three playoff appearances, or 3 times making it to the playoffs, means that we have a lot of guys with playoff experience and guys who have experience playing in big games, and guys who have experience winning playoff games on the road. So all of that is vital, and I think will play a big part in our upcoming game.
Thank you, Joe. We'll start on the Zoom chat. Actually, scratch that. We're going to start with Stephen Borio, then we'll go to the Zoom chat with Tim Sullivan and Drake Hills. Go ahead, Stephen.
So how important do you think your last performance, the team's last performance, is going into this game? Road match against a really good LA team, going back to LA, different team. But, your performance going on the road, because historically, road teams haven't done too well in the MLS playoffs, but you guys have done fantastic on the road previous seasons and this season. So how important do you think last week's road performance is going into this one on Saturday?
It's huge for us. I think if you look at a lot of the details of the trip in general, they're very similar. Flying out a couple days before, cross-country flight to LA, an afternoon game. So a lot of the preparation, I think, we can mirror from last week to this week. So having that win and giving ourselves the confidence to know that we can, go to difficult places, like you said, and get results, it's huge for us. It's a massive confidence boost. But, at the end of the day, we also know that whatever has happened in the past doesn't really matter. It's one and done. If you don't show up on the day, then, you don't get second chances.
Thank you, Joe. We'll go to the Zoom with Tim Sullivan and Drake Hills. Go ahead, Tim.
Hey Joe, this season your numbers haven't been as good as they were the past 2 years, but how important is it to have the sort of game that you had on Sunday to kind of get back that confidence, not just for yourself, but for the defense in front of you going into the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's always important to get big wins on the road. Keeping a clean sheet from my perspective, and defensively speaking from the team's perspective, is big for us. We know that, that's been kind of our MO for 3 years now, is to be solid defensively, to keep clean sheets, and then, even if we don't get that many opportunities going forward, we know we have the players who can take advantage of them and make the most of them. So we need to keep with that mentality, and like I said a million times, winning that game at LAFC last week just kind of reinforced that in our minds that we're capable of doing it.
We'll go to Drake Hills and Claudia Villalobos. Go ahead, Drake.
Hey, what's up, Joe? Wanted to take from your vantage point, obviously, LA Galaxy, both times you guys have played them this year, they put up a lot of shots, both on total, on target. That's obviously similar to what happened at LAFC last weekend. From your vantage point, what are you expecting in terms of how you guys are going to go about going against them strategy-wise for you in the back line? And what do you think that they're going to try to do as far as creating and putting up shots and creating chances?
Yeah, we think they're going to be a very attacking team. They've shown that in the past games we've played them, but now, especially being at home in the playoffs, they're going to want to start, hot and come out firing from the beginning of the game. So we're going to have to be ready for that. We're going to have to stay composed. We're going to have to be patient. We're going to have to stay organized, and we're going to need to pick our moments. You know, we've done plenty of scouting. We've played them a few times. So we're trying to analyze, you know, what their weaknesses are and where we can hurt them. So I think if we continue to just stick to our game plan and what we know about them, then we'll be okay.
Thank you, Joe. We'll swing over to Claudio, then Tim Sullivan. Go ahead, Claudio.
Joe, when you look at both games against Galaxy, the first one in LA and the second in Nashville, Nashville was pretty close to actually getting points from those. Well, it did in the second one. But even in the first one, Nashville was close to even bringing a victory home. But it didn't happen. But one key factor, I think, is the fact that Nashville has been able to corral Chicharito somehow, even though now he's got 4 goals in the last 4 games. Nashville has been able to control him very well, even though he's not the only threat they have. How important it is to do that again? A guy that is probably hot at this point, scoring goals.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely important. He's obviously a focal point of their attack and, you know, a big goal scorer for them. So he's someone we're going to have to keep an eye on for 90 minutes. You know, sometimes he can drift out of a game and then pop up out of nowhere and hurt you. So we're going to continue. We're going to have to continue doing what we've done. Excuse me. Which is, you know, keep an eye on him, but remember that they have a team full of very good attacking players. So we need to, you know, keep that in perspective. He's obviously, like I said, one of their key players, but they can hurt you in a lot of ways. So neutralizing him doesn't mean that the job's done by any means. And like I said, it's a 90-minute game. So even at times, you know, if you're getting the best of him, you need to remember that he's still capable of popping up out of nowhere and you know, finding a goal somehow. So he's definitely someone we're going to have to keep our eye on.
We'll wrap up today's session with Joe Willis and Tim Sullivan. Bring us home, Tim.
Hey Joe, this club has a mixed history with penalty shootouts, but you guys did get a win against Club America in the penalty shootout. I know you weren't directly involved in that, but the issue has been more about your guys making the kicks. How much confidence does that give you guys, or what can you take from that to say, okay, now that we're in the postseason, there might be a situation where we have penalty kicks, and now we, you know, kind of have that belief that we can do it?
Yeah, it definitely helps to win that penalty kick shootout and to give our guys some confidence. You know, penalty kick shootouts are always a crapshoot, so it's hard to look into it too much based on past years and guys who have made or missed or where they've gone or this, that, and the other thing. It's, you know, when you're in the moment and you feel the crowd and the pressure of taking a penalty, and it's, you know, there's not a lot that compares to it, and it's really hard to replicate it. But you know, I think we've got guys who were a part of that team that lost to Philly and who were pissed off about it, and they want to make it right. So if it, you know, does come down to a penalty shootout at any point in this postseason, I think we're going to be more confident than, you know, scared.